Welcome to the Tuesday edition of One's World, and finally, I'm going to do some cooking. I'm going to make the famous Goanese curry Vindaloo. Now, Goa is an island off the west coast of India, used to be a Portuguese colony, and the cooking there is something of a hybrid of Indian cooking and Portuguese cooking, and Vindaloo is a great example. So let's get into it. Portuguese sailors used to preserve their meat in barrels in wine and garlic. And in Portuguese, that is called carne de vinho dalu. Vinho is wine and dalu is garlic, or it's kind of garlic or and garlic. So vinho dalu becomes Vindaloo. And the first thing that the Goanese did was replace the wine with vinegar, which isn't such a bad idea anyway, because let's also do a little bit more etymology. Vinegar is French for vin aigre, which means sour wine, and which is how it's made. It's wine that's soured off. So vinegar, you can use different kinds, and in my house I've got all kinds. I've got rice wine vinegar, cider vinegar, malt vinegar, which I use for pickles and so forth. So what they did was they marinated their meat, and the original meat was pork, and that's what I'm going to do too. They marinated it for a day or more in a mixture of vinegar and garlic. So here's my piece of meat. It's actually a fairly fatty pork belly with a bone in, as it happens. It's quite a substantial roast. So I put it in a zip-top bag, which is the way I typically marinate, rather than in a bowl or something like that, because then you've got to keep stirring all the time. But if you put the meat in a zip-top bag with your marinade, in this case I used rice wine vinegar and a ton of garlic, put them all in there and then squeeze all of the air out of the zip-top bags and then refrigerate it. So I refrigerated for 24 hours. And subsequently I began my cooking, and there are really two parts to this cooking process. One is the making of a spice mixture, and I'll show you the spices that I used here and go through some of them. This is the part of Vindaloo where it's cook's choice and varies very much from region to region. And in particular, Goanese Vindaloo is quite different from the Vindaloo you find in Indian restaurants in England. And you'll find it in all English Indian restaurants. You find it pretty much in Indian restaurants throughout the world. I used to find it in Buenos Aires in Indian restaurants. Although there, it was very strange because Argentinos don't like spicy food. So it was hard to get. Anyway, the spices that I've got here, you can just sort of get the general idea. Some of them you may not know. Garam masala is a very common spice mix that is used throughout India. Asafoetida, if you smell asafoetida, kind of gives you the sense of curry. very hot smoked paprika, coriander, cumin, a ton of hot pepper, and then just some other spices that I happen to like. One is a tandoori masala, and the other one is a biryani spice mix. So that's my basic spices. In India, sometimes they will use whole spices, which they'll toast and then crush. But I started off with ground spices and left it at that. So after assembling my spices, I also made some tamarind water. Now, tamarind comes in these pods that you can see here, and I separated them off and poured boiling water on them and left them for a few hours to leach out the tamarind taste, which is quite sour, but fruity as well. Then mix them all together and into a cooking pot, and then simmer for about 20 minutes, just to release all the flavors. Then I added some tomato sauce. I'm not sure how often Indians, or in general Goanese in particular, use a tomato base, but it's quite common, so I used that. And then I added into the general mix some curry leaves, which are, it's very hard to get, but they have the savor of like curry powder in a way, and some julienne ginger. So that's my Vindaloo paste. Now you can buy Vindaloo paste, Patak, and a number of other famous spice companies make one, and it makes your life very easy. Then you just have to dump it into your pot with your meat and just cook away until you're ready. But you have to then rely on what the manufacturer wants to put in the sauce. And I like to mix it up a little bit, and so I went with my own variety. Okay, so now I took the pork out of the marinade and just let it air dry for a little while, and then cubed it up. Meanwhile, I took an onion and sauteed it in a little bit of plain oil. You don't want to use olive oil. You don't want to add that particular flavor to a curry. But some plain oil, and brown off the onion. I've done this many times in other videos. Just remind you to do it on a very low, slow heat for a very long time, and keep a close eye. Worry the onions around until they're browned, and then I put them in the pot, and then I browned off the pork. Same procedure as always, just make sure that you brown all sides, and then also into the pot. And now just simmer for about an hour. In this case, I think it was about 90 minutes. I'm not sure because the pork was a little bit tough. Just whatever it takes, and you can do this in a slow cooker if you like. It works very well. Just get it all to this point into the slow cooker, then overnight for 5 or 6 hours, and it'll be nice and ready to go in the morning. In my case, I simmered for about 90 minutes and then into the fridge and overnight. And that's something I've been telling you again and again and again as well. Whenever you're making soups, stews, any kind of long simmered dish, it's much better the next day. So into the fridge. Next day, back to heating and serve. And in this case, I served it with saffron rice. It's called royal pilau because it's the saffron rice with a boiled egg and some tomato and in this case I've got a little bit of chopped up cilantro as a garnish, and naan bread. I could have used chapatis. I've got chapatis, but I decided since I had some naan bread as well, I decided to use that. So that's a complete dish, and it's going to keep me going for a very, very long time. I'm not that big of an eater, but I did, after I had marinated the pork, I marinated a lamb chop, and I will make a lamb vindaloo, but I'll probably end up having to freeze it. And I also was going to make a duck vindaloo, but I just don't have enough of a big stomach for all of that vindaloo, so that'll have to wait. But duck vindaloo is sometimes put into glass containers when it's cooked, and then put in a water bath and tightened so that it's hermetically sealed, and then stored for a very long time until it kind of like ferments and matures. And I might try that. We'll see. I'm not sure. That sounds like a good idea because I'm in a pickling mood these days. I pickle avocados and onions and leeks and garlic a lot, so I think I could probably do that, but if I get the right container. Anyway, there's Vindaloo for you. I wish you a joyous week, and please subscribe and like and tell your friends, and I will see you on Friday.